Well, hello, everybody. I want to take this chance to work a more difficult problem that is in our MyMathLab assignment. Okay? And that problem is the one that you see here. It says find the domain of the function that's given and give your answer in interval notation. And the function is somewhat complicated. I mean, at least as far as the assignment goes, there are functions that are way simpler than this one. All right. But I did find that on MyMathLab, and here's what it looks like on MyMathLab. Find the domain of the function, type your answer in interval notation. See what that says right there? Okay, so we will do that. But I can't resist doing a quick review of what's the domain of a function, how you find it, and all that. If you don't need that, then you can fast forward a little bit, okay? So what's not allowed in a function? Well, there are certain kind of calculations that are not allowed. At least in our class right now, okay? And one of them is taking the root of a negative number, okay? And the other is division by zero. Those are the kinds of calculations that we're not going to allow to happen in a function, all right? And the reason that we avoid roots of negative numbers and division by zero is that when we plug a number into a function, we want an answer back out. And if you end up with the root of a negative or dividing by zero, then you won't get an answer back out. Okay, so that's the rationale behind it. Let me give you an example, a quick example of that. So take this function, 4 divided by x squared plus x minus 20. Now suppose I just tell you that the domain of this function is every number except 4 and negative 5. Okay? That means that you can plug in any number to this function except those two without any problem. And if I do plug in these two, then I won't get an answer back out. All right? And I can try it out. I can show you that that happens. I'll take this function and I'll plug in 4. All right? So if I do that, this is what it looks like. And I'm doing the calculations and I end up with 4 divided by 0, and that's an impossible calculation. I don't get an answer. I mean, when I plug a number into a function, I want an answer back out. That's how they're intended to work. So the domain cuts out all the numbers that don't work. And the numbers that don't work, roots of negatives and division by 0. Any number that would lead to root of a negative number or division by 0. Okay, now I didn't tell you how I figured out that this is the domain. I want to leave that to you. Okay, so let's go back to this problem that I wanted to start the video with. Okay, so how would we find the domain of this function? Well, I see that it has a square root, and I know that as far as that goes, I can't have the root of a negative number. Okay, so that I see that in the function, and that immediately comes to mind that that's off limits. I can't have whatever number is in there become a negative. Okay, all right. And then down here I see that there's a division bar, and then there's some stuff down there. And you know, whatever these numbers turn out to be, I can't have that bottom number turn out to be 0, because that's also not allowed. So the function itself might be complicated, but in the end, I cannot have a negative number show up in there. Like, for example, what happened if the x was negative 6? What's negative 6 plus 5? Well, that's negative 1. And then I got a negative number, and the root of a negative number is, we're avoiding that, all right? Okay. So you see what I mean? So I can't have a root of a negative, and I can't have a 0 down there. All right, now here's how I go about figuring out what would lead to this. This is just a concept here. This doesn't tell me the answer. This just tells me how to get the answer. So we'll do like this. We'll say, all right. 1, I can't have this thing under the root be negative. So in other words, I need it to be 0 or more. I need x plus 5, which is under the root, to be greater than or equal to 0. And if I solve this inequality, say by subtracting 5 from both sides, then it will lead to this inequality, which says the x being the number that gets plugged into the function, needs to be greater than or equal to -5. All right, so that's part of it. That's one thing that needs to happen, okay? But also, what else did I say? I can't have a 0 under the division. I can't divide by 0. So I need to have x squared plus x minus 20, which is what you see under that bar. That's what you're dividing by. I can't have that be 0. So I put x squared plus x minus 20 not equals to 0. The way I would solve this is by factoring it. Okay, and factoring is another topic that I can help you with, but I'm going to take it for granted in this video. I factor it, and then each factor leads to an answer. Me factoring it this way says, on one hand, x plus 5 cannot be 0. And again, if I subtract 5 from both sides, I get the statement x cannot be -5. Okay? And then I have x minus 4 right here, cannot be equal to 0. And if I add 4 in order to solve here, I get x cannot be 4. So look what I have. I have 3 things that have to happen. Look at these ands. I have to have x be greater than or equal to -5. And I have to have x not be -5. And I have to have x not be 4. Okay? And that's might be kind of hard to think about. Those 3 things happening. I got to have this happen, and this happen, and this happen. So how am I going to make all that happen? It might be best if you visualized it. So I'm gonna let's try to visualize this. So here I have the number line. Those are ways that we visualize numbers. Okay. So what were those 3 things that I said had to happen? The first one was that x has to be greater than or equal to -5. That means that the number -5 or more is okay. So I put a dot right here on the number line to say that I'm going to include the -5, and I drew an arrow to the right to say I'm going to include everything that's more than -5. Okay, so I got to have that happen. But what else did it say? It also said that you also have to have x not be -5 and x not be -4. So in addition to this, I have to have -5 not be okay. So it's like now I'm going to take that out. And also 4 is not okay. So I got to take that out. Okay, so my domain then is everything in here and then everything out here. Now I'm going to use a different color, all right? I'm going to use blue. I'm going to say, here's my domain. My domain is going to be blue. That would be all of this from -5 to 4, not including either one of them, and all of this from 4 forever to the right. Okay? Not including the 4. Everything to the right of 4. So there's my domain, all right? Visually, like that's my answer. Everything in here, everything between -5 and 4, and then everything bigger than 4. Now, I know the answer at that point, but here it says to give the domain an interval notation. All right, so that's like a formal, sophisticated way to present the answer. So here's how I would do that. In interval notation, to say every number from -5 to 4, I would say -5, 4 with parentheses, okay? That says every number from -5 to 4 except the -5 and the 4 themselves, okay? If I were to put a bracket instead of parentheses, that would include the -5 or the 4. And I need to combine that with this other collection, all these numbers that are more than 4. So this is our union symbol. It's how we combine intervals like this. And then we'll say, and we'll combine that with 4. How do we say like from 4 forever to the right? Like everything bigger than 4. Because that's what we have over here. The numbers go forever. That's what the concept of infinity is for. So 4 to infinity. So there's my answer. Okay. The domain is everything from -5 to 4 combined with everything from 4 forever to the right. 4 and bigger. So let's put that in. Okay. I'll show you how this works. All right, so I've got my keypad down here and I need to do -5 to 4. So there's an interval of that first part. And then here's my union symbol, which I'm going to combine that with the interval from 4 to infinity. Okay, So like that. That should do it right there. So, okay, I put it in once solving it the right way. That's interval notation, what you see right there. And then we'll check it and see that it's right. Okay, so that's how we do it. I hope you see the stages of this where, you know, I have to understand how I'm going to go about figuring out the domain and what numbers to leave out. Then I've got these individual equations and inequalities I solve to get there. But then, like, I think most people might need to visualize. Most people I come across need to see things and visualize them in math. All right? And I hope the number line really helps pull it all together for you.